Hey guys, it's Morticia, and it is Taco Tuesday. Today we will be breaking from the up till now basic format of Taco Tuesday, but I did warn you it would change over time. This week I don't have anyone to record with. Gomez is out of town, and I was going to do a talk about grooming, but I thought instead we could still kind of do a talk about grooming, but today is get to know Morticia. Not a lot of personal details about my life. This is the internet. I don't know if you guys are weirdos. But I wanted to talk about how I got into doing chat logs and why they matter to me. So this will be essentially a collection of stories from when I myself was groomed by multiple adult men over Yahoo in the early aughts, just like the chat logs I read, at the exact same time on the exact same platform. I was one of those kids that they were trying to protect. And that is why this means so much to me. So today we're going to do a little how I got here story. And we're going to talk about some grooming techniques and the lasting effects that they have on a person and why it is so important to recognize grooming and to have frank conversations with kids in your lives, especially if they're online a lot, about the dangers that can happen to you. So I am going to first start out with some basic Morticia facts, and I will tell you when the trigger warning begins. But if you want to know a little bit about the surface of me first, my favorite color is red. My favorite movie is Labyrinth. My favorite animated movie is Beauty and the Beast. And it's kind of tied with The Last Unicorn. And my, I would say, second favorite movie is probably Fight Club. I have 2 Fight Club tattoos. I have a tattoo of Marla Singer, who is just, I might actually talk about her later, I don't know, but she means a lot to me. And, there are a few literary heroines that mean a lot to me. One is Scarlett O'Hara and also Marla Singer. Yes, Fight Club is a book. For those of you that did not know, it's a good book. And true, the movie did improve a lot of it, but it is still a good book. It's worth the read, kind of. So there's a whole Scarlett O'Hara rant I could go on right now, but I will not. I will spare you guys the Scarlett O'Hara rant. That is narrowcasting, isn't it? You guys don't care. What other weird Morticia facts are there? I believe in ghosts. My biggest fear is whales and bread mold. The bread mold one is this ingrained fear from when I was a child where, I was like really, really young, like 3 or 4, and there was bread that was moldy, and my mother said, that has mold, we can't use it, and I misheard her, and I thought she said moles, and my tiny little child brain thought that if, like, when bread gets moldy, because I didn't know the word for it, but when bread gets fuzzy and green, it will at some point start sprouting moles that will run around your house. And I've always been kind of freaked out by skittering rodents. I'm not like really afraid of mice or anything like that, but it's just something about it creeped me out. And so I was really afraid for a couple of weeks before the confusion got ironed out that moles were going to start just overtaking our house. We were going to have an infestation of moles. And for some reason, that fear has stayed with me for the rest of my life, even though I know that is now not true. I am still terrified of bread mold. I can't handle it. Food mold, But like mold that's on walls or shit like that doesn't bother me. It's only food mold. Don't know why. Anyways, that's a stupid Morticia story for you. Can't really think of much else to say, so let's get into the trigger warning part of this. This is a trigger warning for grooming, like very frank talk of grooming. I'm going to be very honest, and if I had to go through it, the least you can do is be able to listen to it. But if you have previous grooming trauma or anything like that, if it's too much for you, if talk of grooming will upset you, number one, I have no idea why you were on my chat log channel to begin with, because that's like 90% of it. But do take care of yourself. If that's not for you, you can click off this video. There will be no discussion of assault. Not that those things did not happen to me, but they are personal, private things that I don't want to talk about on the internet. So there's no trigger warning for talk of assault. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to talk about the crazy things that I encountered on Yahoo as a teenager that changed the course of my life and made me passionate about delving into the chat logs of predators. That's it. Okay, so if you can handle that, let's get started. So we got a family computer in 2000. I was about 12-ish at the time, and I did not know anything about computers really or the internet, and I was from a small town. I was very sheltered. I went to a very small school, like my 8th grade graduating class at this little private school that I went to. That sounds like bougie, but it's a small town private school. Like, it didn't even have tuition. Like, it was a religious school. So it's a Catholic school. I don't know why I'm like being weird about it. I went to a Catholic school, but the graduating class was 10 kids. That's the kind of small town that we're talking about. There was no crime. To this day, my family that still lives in that town, they leave their cars unlocked, their doors unlocked. Like, it's not a problem. It's so small. And like, if someone breaks into your house, like, for sure you'll know who it is. It'll be that one problem kid in town, like that kind of sheltered. And like a lot of vulnerable kids, I had severe ugly duckling syndrome. I was just an absolute bridge troll of an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old. And when I was 12, over the summer after 8th grade, I hit my growth spurt and I hit puberty super fast. Like, it did not take very long. Like, over the summer, I grew 4 inches and lost 100 pounds. Like, I had always been the overweight, ugly girl, and I lost all the weight and shot up to 5'5", and just over the course of a couple of months grew up really fast. And I still had the mentality of this very unpopular, ugly girl. And my home life was great. My family's wonderful. I didn't have any kind of trauma like that, but I did live in a family dynamic where my sibling was older and very rebellious. So they drew a lot of attention, and I was a straight A student who always followed the rules. So I didn't get very much attention because I wasn't losing my mind constantly. I was attention starved, and I felt like I was really ugly. And I was extremely naive and extremely sheltered. This is a recipe for the perfect grooming victim. If you know anything about grooming, each of those bullet points there just made your heart clench. So I didn't know anything really about the internet. Through some friends that I made, they taught me how to make a Yahoo account, make an MSN Messenger, AOL Messenger, ICQ. I had all of them. I met this girl that I became best friends with, and we both had pretty much the same outlook on life, and we did everything together. And her parent was very absent. We were often left alone at her house with just unlimited internet connection, which for 2000, 2001, 2002 was wow, holy crap. And we would just go into chat rooms and talk to random people all the time. We were really bored. And to us, it was fun. Through that, many different predators found us and started the grooming process. When I met this girl, she was really into Disney movies, and we both had Barbies still, which we were at the age we were a little ashamed of having them, but we still really wanted to play with them. This is the kind of age that we were. We didn't lie about our age ever. It never occurred to us to lie about it. We didn't need to. A lot of the chat logs that I read, they'll say, oh, I went out with this girl and she lied to me and said she was older. And I never believed that, because there's no reason to lie and say you're older. Back in those days, men were not afraid of you being a teenager. I can't remember an instance of someone saying, goodbye, you're too young for me. I don't remember that ever happening. I never had a reason to lie. It never stopped anyone. So what this created was this thought in my head that this was positive attention because that's what they told me. First of all, they would tell me I'm smart, I'm funny, I'm beautiful, all of these things that I had never heard before, really. I had gotten a digital camera, which that was all the rage back then. This was before like cell phones were widely used and before camera phones were even a thing. So back then, if you wanted a picture on the computer, you had to have a digital camera. And for my 8th grade graduation, that was the present I got. It was a low quality, but it was a digital camera. I did have pictures of myself, just my face and, clothed, but like my body and stuff, because I was asked about them constantly. And I would put them on my MySpace, and these dudes would add me on MySpace. And I didn't tell my parents that I had any of this because I wasn't allowed to. My parents allowed me to have a half an hour of internet time per day. That was it. So I would walk to my friend's house most of the days, after school, or during the summer I would spend the whole day out there and just use her computer all day. A couple of men, I shouldn't say a couple, it was like maybe 10, were sort of my constants that I met. But there were a lot more that would just kind of breeze through and like cyber sex and then bugger off and I'd never see them again. But there were enough that had long sustained grooming over me. I am going to now tell you the stories of these men. And so the first one that I'm going to talk about, I remember he told me his name was John. I don't know. Half the predators say their name is John. It could have been a lie. I don't know. He was in a metal band, in a town about 45 minutes away from me. And he was 34-ish when we met. And I was 13, about maybe 12, but probably more like 13. And he started very slowly. He was just my buddy for a while, He just wanted to talk about life and he wanted to be there for me when things were hard. He would talk about, I remember my first boyfriend was when I was 13. We dated for like 2 weeks and then broke up. Standard teenager relationship. We didn't even kiss. I think we held hands once. And when we broke up, this guy would, talk me through it and he would listen, and it was long, sustained grooming. It was reinforcement of, you can talk to me, I'm safe. Until of course I believed it. You're raised to believe adults because you're a kid, you don't know anything. So adults are the ones that you trust. And in the life that I had led, that had always been true. I know that a lot of other people have very traumatic childhoods and they don't really trust adults because they've never had an adult to trust. But in my life, an adult had never done me wrong up until this point. So it really worked on me. I was like, oh my gosh, he's like one of my best friends. And it never occurred to me ever that it was weird that a 34-year-old man would be this interested in the minutia of a teenager's life. That's crazy, but he was. So it continued for a year or so before he started getting creepily sexual with me. And that timeline might be wrong. It might have been 6 months. I don't know. That was a long time ago. I mean, if you guys can't do the math, it was over 20 years ago. It's hard to remember exactly, but I know it was a long period of time, and because I remember the initial shock when I found out that he had a crush on me. I was so smug about it, I would tell my friend whose house I went to, I'd talk to him at her house all the time, and I would tell her, he's in a band, he's a drummer in a band, he's so popular, what would he ever want with me, little old me? And I really felt so cool because I had this guy in a band that was interested in me. And I was so lame. I was in the marching band. I was a band geek. And I also was I thought I was really hardcore punk back then too, with my really crappy mohawk and my, rancid t-shirts. But I was like, wow, he really sees me for the person that I am. And he really made it feel like it was a gift that he was giving me. And he started to groom me to be the replacement of his current girlfriend, because he had told me at first that he had a girlfriend who was 16. and that he just liked younger girls. And this seemed normal to me. It really did. Again, I never had a man online say, oh, wow, you're too young for me. This was during the era of, the Olsen twins countdown calendar to 18 and people sexualizing Britney Spears at the age of 16. And I would hear phrases like, if there's grass on the field, play ball. If they've hit puberty, old enough to bleed, old enough to breed. These things were super common. And it was just my absolute worldview because of society that, of course, older men like younger women. That didn't seem weird in the slightest to me. That was not something that was ingrained by my parents' mind. That was just a thing I picked up from society. My mother never thought that was normal. My dad was never attracted to teenagers, like, openly or anything like that. But I just knew that was the way of the world, and my groomers made it seem so normal, too. They would say, oh, because they're clean and their bodies are tighter, which scared me a little because I had used to be overweight and I had lost all this weight. And so I was developing an eating disorder because they kept telling me that I was too fat. And I was a normal BMI. I was not overweight at the time. But because of the way that I had developed, I had gotten rather big hips. That's just the way my body is. And it was overly womanly, I guess, because my groomers really did like to say, ooh, I wish you were just a bit thinner. I have a big butt. And that was before the era of big butts being cool. So they would say, like, I wish your butt was, much smaller and tighter and just teeny tiny. At the same time, it was weird because they wanted my boobs to be bigger. So I guess what they wanted was a prepubescent child, but with like F-cup boobs. I don't know what they were looking for, but it was not what I looked like. But I was an easy person to groom, so they just went ahead and tried to talk me into trying to starve myself into what they wanted. I had a lot of them ask me to get breast implants when I was 14. So luckily I didn't get boobs until later in life. That was the only thing that puberty was late on for me. So this guy, John, back to him. He was grooming me to take over when his girlfriend aged out of being his girlfriend because she was 16, and unlike the way the world should work, he really didn't want her after she turned 18. Of course, he told me she didn't know this. I felt so special because I was young enough that he would consider me, and he was so cool. So I, again, did not think anything weird about that. I was flattered. And I remember him asking me if I would like to try having a threesome with them, him and his girlfriend, before she, quote, got old and used up, which to this day, I am terrified of aging. I had panic attacks in my 20s on my birthday when I would reach ages that I knew were gross. And this current incel philosophy BS, this alpha male BS that women hit the wall every year. It gets earlier, doesn't it? It used to be they hit the wall at 30 and then 28 and then 25. What's it down to now, guys? Is it 23? Yeah. And so I would be terrified of it. That part of his grooming me lasted, well, I'll tell you when it ends, because it hasn't yet, even though I have been to therapy many, many, many times and for many years. So I didn't end up meeting him in person until later in life when I was 18 or 19. But it was just sheer coincidence because he was grooming me to replace his girlfriend, but he was not dating me. So I dated other people my age. He didn't have a problem with that. He wanted to know all of the details of it when I inevitably lost my virginity over the course of our 4 or 5 year talking. He wanted to know all the details of that. He wanted to know what I was doing with my boyfriends, if I liked it. You guys have heard chat logs. You know exactly what he was asking me. It's just like the chat logs. That's exactly what happened to me. And so luckily, I never met him in person until I was a legal adult. And I still remember the day I saw him in person, the very first time. I was, I believe, 18, and I was at a concert, just a small one. not like a big concert. It was a local, I shouldn't even call it a concert. It was just a local gig. My boyfriend at the time, who was age appropriate, we were the same age, he was in a very crappy local band that had like 3 fans, that kind of thing. And they were playing a show in a basement of a bar because they weren't old enough to play upstairs of the bar. But there was a band upstairs as well, and it happened to be John's band. I did not know this at the time when I went to the concert. I went out back at one point because one of the band members of my boyfriend's band wanted to smoke. I didn't smoke, my boyfriend didn't, but we went out with him to have a smoke. And John was in the parking lot with the van that they used to transport their equipment. And I recognized him. I had seen pictures of him. I had seen him on webcam. I knew exactly what he looked like, and it was definitely him. He had a very distinctive hairstyle. And I remember being terrified because I saw him from the back, and when he started to turn, it was like my like primal brain realized that this was a predator before my conscious brain really got it. And I remember ducking behind my boyfriend and hiding. And he didn't know why I was doing that, obviously. But at this point, I was 18. I hadn't heard from John since I had turned 17 because I was too old, used up, that kind of thing. I had sex once, but I was totally used up. I hid, and he did not see me at first. But I heard the van pull away eventually, and I peeked back up, and he hadn't gone with them, apparently, because he ended up talking to me. Apparently it was just 2 of his other bandmates had gone to get snacks or something, or drinks mid-show. I don't fucking remember. And he came over and he talked to me for a few minutes. It was super awkward, but he was like, when the guys get back with the van, do you want to go for a drive for a little bit? And I was like, no, man, I'm here with my boyfriend. I don't want to do this. And he was like really trying to talk me into this van, which is crazy because, again, I was old and used up, but maybe it had been a while since he'd had some. So he would, I guess, have sex with a legal adult if he had to. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he really wanted me to get in that van. And I really did not want to. So I just went back inside and hid in the crowd that was downstairs, and I saw him looking for me. My friends hid me, and he eventually left. And the last time I saw him in person, I was working at this gas station when I was 19 or 20. I don't remember. I worked there for a while, but it was out in the sticks, and I worked there alone at night. 10 p.m., 6 a.m., that shift. And it was very, very slow. There was nobody out there. I got like 3 customers a night. It was like nothing. It was mostly just to clean and stock and organize, honestly. But they stopped to get gas one night, and it was the only time I ever saw him at this gas station. It was just a random thing. They had come into town to play a gig, and they were getting gas on their way out, and I was the only one open. And I saw him pumping gas, and my heart felt like it was gonna explode. I got so scared. My hands were shaking. I was pale. I was clammy. I was sweaty, and I did not know why. I thought it was just like social anxiety. Now that I'm an adult, I can look back on that and realize that it was a fear response because this person meant me harm. And no matter the amount of grooming that he did to make me comfortable, there was a part of me that still recognized it, even if I couldn't put it into words because I didn't know what grooming was, and I didn't know that what he wanted to do to me was bad. But I was still afraid of him. And it's a very complex and sick mindset that grooming puts you in, where you feel you feel the need for the validation of the attention, but you're also afraid of this person. And it is a constant stomachache dealing with it. And it messes up your relationships for the rest of your life because it teaches you that your worth is your sexual value. And that's it. Because they always start out, long con groomers like that always start out with compliments about how beautiful you are and how smart you are and funny and interesting. But there comes a point where that pretense drops. And after that, it is just freight train grooming, sexual grooming. That's all that happens after that. They only want to ask you sexual questions. It's like an abusive relationship. You keep waiting for that initial person that was so good and lovely. And this has to be the same person, right? And so they have to be treating you just as well at this point, right? You don't know anything about adult relationships. So this is normal, correct? Who teaches you how to have an adult relationship? You're supposed to just learn as you go with other people your age. But when you're groomed, it's this tainted, crooked, fast, like bullet train into parts of adulthood that you should not be part of yet. I knew about BDSM when I was 13. I knew that. I thought that was normal sexuality because that's what adults told me. That sort of thing. And it was way too much, way too fast. And part of me understood that, even though my bravado of, I can do this, I'm amazing, I'm so mature and adult, they tell me I am, so it has to be true. All of that shit gets in your head and you believe it. And so you can't end this relationship because, what, you can't handle it? You can't handle it? Man up. And yeah, people tell women to man up as well. It's not just men. So anyways, John was at the gas station. And I saw him outside pumping gas and I got afraid. And he came in, did not acknowledge me in the slightest. When I said, "Hi, how are you?" The standard being polite cashier talk. He just told me he wanted some Marlboros and paid and did not say anything other than 2 packs of Marlboros. He left without making eye contact with me. He knew it was me because I could tell from the way he was avoiding me and wouldn't speak. He didn't want to reopen any of this relationship. He had blocked me on Yahoo at this point because I still had it. I still talked on Yahoo at the time. He had blocked me. I was gross and old now. And he didn't want to start up any more relationship with me because I was gross and old and I was just one of the ones that got away. I was a child that he put a lot of work into grooming, and then he did not get to molest me. And I think he, held on to a lot of that anger, and I think I was a huge disappointment for him. But that was the last time I saw John. So probably by the end of when he stopped talking to me, I don't know, he was probably close to 40, about 4 years, 38, close to 40, yeah. So, yeah. By the time I saw him at the gas station, he must have been in his 40s at that point. And that's how a grown man in his 40s acts, I guess, around a child that he groomed who's now an adult. He might have also just been really afraid that I was going to say something now that I was an adult. Maybe he was afraid that I'd figured it out. I don't know. But I never did. I didn't even know what he did to me was wrong at the time. So he was safe from me. And he never told me his last name that I remember. I do still remember his Yahoo screen name though. And when I read old chat logs, I look for it. I haven't seen it yet, but I do look for it. Story number 2. This one is about a man named Matt. Again, I don't know if that's his real name. Who knows? That's what he told me it was. And he lived about 2 to 3 hours away in a different state. I was close to a state line, so he lived in a different state, but he really wasn't that far away from me. But I don't know a lot about him. He was very cagey. He was one of those groomers who wanted every single piece of information about me he could possibly get, but wouldn't tell me anything about him. And he started the conversation with me initially in a very strange way. And I'm only going to tell this story because I am so mad at myself for not realizing it at the time. But I got an IM from him that was obviously mid-conversation with someone else that had been mistakenly sent to me. But it was an opening line. We had never spoken before, so I wouldn't have been on his list. So the way Yahoo works is you have to click on somebody's name and then choose to send them a message. And so anyways, it was something about a parrot. I don't know why I remember that all these years later, but I do. He might have been my very first one. I met him when I was 12, and he was careful. He was the type that he wanted to groom me and jerk off to me and cyber sex with me until I was 18, and then he wanted to have actual real life meet and have sex. He would wait. He would not risk jail to come see me. And I never asked anybody to come see me. I wasn't that kind of person. I really kind of just liked talking on the internet. The thought of actually meeting someone in person did give me, a bit of the nervous hives. Not that I never did it, but that's the next story. But I didn't push to meet anyone is what I'm saying, and he was happy to bide his time. And anyways, he sent me this message halfway into a conversation. It was something about, and then what did the parrot do? Something like that. And I was like, what? And he was like, how did that send to you? I was trying to send that to a friend. Who even are you? But I was in a chat room at the time. And he just thought that as an adult, at the time, I believed him. I was like, wow, weird. I can't believe Yahoo did that. It's never done that before or ever since then. But crazy. It's just such a weird little glitch that happened. I really fully believed it. Now, as an adult, I can see it for the opening volley into trying to talk to a child without seeming like you're trying to talk to a child. And so it was his way of getting around the, oh, you messaged her on purpose looking for sex kind of thing. It was a total accident. And we just developed a friendship. And he was like, well, since that happened, it must be fate. We should talk. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And I remember thinking it was just the most fun story. And I told people that story a lot, which is probably why I remember it so clearly. But we talked a lot over the next few years, probably from 12 to 16. we were in near daily contact. Sometimes he would disappear for a long time, like a month, but it was always his computer died. And then we would go back to talking every single day for as long as I could be online. And me and the girl that I would go into chat rooms with at her house that I had mentioned, she was also being groomed by the men that chose her. We were a very strange pair in which we wore the same pant size, we were the same height, we wore the same bra size and the same shirt size. Like we looked like carbon copies of each other, except for the fact that she was blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and I've always had dark hair and dark eyes. So the men that wanted a blonde would talk to her, and the men that liked, the goth look would talk to me. So she was also being groomed, and we were being taught together that being hypersexual was how people like you. That is what you pay to belong in the world. You are not really that interesting unless you're giving it up. You get more attention if you're sexual than if you don't. And y'all might have picked up the kind of sad backstory of her life where her one parent was never around and we were always alone and allowed to do whatever we wanted. Yeah, it wasn't a great situation for her, so she was super attention starved as well. So we both realized at one point that we were bisexual, and we started dating each other, which got us way more attention from the men online than we ever thought it would. We actually didn't want to tell them because we were afraid that they wouldn't want to still talk to us if they knew that we were together. But we very much had feelings for each other as well, but it was the proto teenager version of an open relationship. It was a very strange situation, and I don't know why it developed that way. We may have been groomed into it, I don't know, but I mean, I'm an adult now. I know I wasn't groomed into my sexuality. I actually knew I liked girls much earlier than she did. But I remember seeing Tyra Banks in Sports Illustrated, and I was like, well, I'm gay as hell. And being in a Catholic school, it wasn't super great. So I was really ashamed of my sexuality, and I didn't tell anyone about it. I actually didn't even come out to my family until I was in my 30s. Like I was terrified to let anyone know that I was gay. I put up a picture of her and I like kissing on my MySpace, and my brother saw it and threatened to beat me up if I didn't take it down. And so we couldn't date each other and tell anyone, so we dated in secret. So we thought it was a shameful thing, and we thought they wouldn't like us because we were kind of seeing someone. But we found out from probably a groomer saying, would you ever do something with a girl, and being like, well, actually. And we found that it got us a lot more attention, which felt good and hit that dopamine center in your brain where these people like you. You are accepted finally in this world where people did not like us. We were out of control. We both had burgeoning mental health issues. We were both being rather aggressively groomed. We were going through puberty. We were mentally unstable. And these men took as much advantage of it as they possibly could and conned us into doing things that I won't get into. But they were bad things that scared us, and we would just tell them, yeah, we did it, instead of doing it because we were very scared. And then they started wanting like picture proof, and I had that digital camera. And we ended up telling people that it broke because we were too scared to do the things, so we couldn't take pictures of the things. And so we were like, oh, the camera broke. They would still be like, okay, well, just describe it then, and then they would jerk off, and we would get the attention that we wanted. That was what we wanted. And I was so rewarded for being hypersexualized back then that it became my identity, because that was what got me the most attention. That's what made people like me the most. Except for it didn't make my other female friends like me hardly at all. And this is not like the other girls rant. That's not what I'm going on. It was because these other girls that we were friends with were not being groomed because they weren't online. They weren't in Yahoo chat rooms and doing these things. And so they saw our hypersexuality as uncomfortable and strange. And looking back, yeah, I bet we were hard to deal with because we didn't know that the things we were saying were weird. To this day, I sometimes will tell a story that I have categorized as funny my whole life, and an adult friend of mine who, wasn't groomed will say, that's not a funny story, that's a tragedy. Like, you're telling me a trauma. And I'm like, no, it's funny. It's wait. Oh my God, you're right. I have to talk about this in therapy now, because I'm in my mid-30s and I still, just 2 weeks ago realized that something I had gone through, and I won't get into it here, it is disturbing. Something that I had gone through that I had thought was funny was actually disturbing, and I had a panic attack. Anyway, back to Matt. Matt was aggressive in his sexuality, but he was also very careful. He never told me an exact location. He would switch screen names a lot. I don't remember any of them at this point. He switched them so often. He would say, hey, it's Matt. I very much doubt his name was Matt. I would be shocked if that was his name. I would be shocked if he lived in the state he said he lived in, because he would just jumble up shit all the time. He wanted to call us at some point, and he blocked his number. He wouldn't let me have his number, but we gave him my girlfriend's number because we didn't care. We didn't know that that was dangerous. So Matt disappeared when I was about 16. For the people that are in my Discord, there is a secret chat log channel where I post the really, really disturbing chat logs that I will never be able to cover on my channel. The ones that give me panic attacks and flashbacks, the really dark side of all of this, because most of my videos are very funny, but there is a dark side to it, and Matt was that kind of groomer. He's the locked thread groomer. The things that he introduced me to this day, I don't even know if I'm old enough at this point to hear about them. But I definitely wasn't at 12 or 13, 14, 15, and 16, but he disappeared, and he never came online again. My personal working theory is that he probably went to jail for something he shouldn't have done, but I don't know. He was very adamant that he was going to wait until I was 18, and that boy, he lasted years. 3.5, 4 years. So, his willpower seems to be fine, but I think he risked it. I think he did the bad, risk it for the biscuit, and I think he went to jail because he did just disappear. And then years after, about 2 years after I had gone to college, I was 18, and I was still dating that guy in the band from that previous story about John. We were still together, and he would drive out on the weekends to see me at college and stay in my dorm. And it was on one of those weekends where I was with him. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. My parents didn't believe in them, and I had to pay for it myself, but I was in college. I didn't have a job at the time. I was looking for some part-time work, but I hadn't found it yet, so I couldn't afford my own cell phone. But I did have a dorm phone, which for you, if any of you youngins out there don't know what that is, it was just a landline that you could connect. Each dorm had a landline in it. You had to buy your own phone, but, it had a preset phone number for that room. And there was a student directory. So, all this to explain, one night I was laying in bed with my then boyfriend, and I shouldn't say that. We had technically broken up, but we were kind of seeing if we were going to get back together, but we weren't sure because I had gone to college and he didn't, and it was a long drive, whatever. So we weren't really dating, but we still very much loved each other. And so we were laying in bed just, talking, hanging out, and the phone rang, the dorm phone. And that was kind of odd. People didn't really call me, but whatever. So I answered, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, it was late. And the dorm phone rang. I was like, hello? And this really deep voice on the other end said, hey, can you come outside? And I was like, well, first of all, can you tell me who you are? And he was like, I'd prefer it if you just came outside and then I would tell you. And I was like, that's a little too weird for me. You're going to have to identify yourself. But the voice sounded vaguely familiar. I hadn't talked to him on the phone in about 4 years. Like, he didn't call regularly. He did like 2 verification calls early on to make sure that I really was the girl he was talking to. And then he didn't call. And so, but it sounded kind of familiar. And which is why I didn't just hang up, because I felt like I knew this person. I just couldn't place it. And I was like, can you please just tell me who you are? I'm not going to come outside if you don't say it. And he was like, it's Matt. And I was like, Matt who? I had forgotten about him. It had been 2 years since I'd spoken to him. And like, there's a lot of dudes named Matt. I had met 1 or 2 since. And I was like, Matt who? And he was like, Matt from Yahoo. Do you remember the parrot? Matt. And I was like, what? How did you find me? And I still to this day do not know how he found me. It was out of nowhere. And again, I had moved to college. I don't know how he even found out where I went to college. I'm sure these days, like, internet sleuths could piece it together. I probably had it on my Facebook. He probably found my Facebook. He probably found the student directory. He probably did all those things. But that's scary, isn't it? That he would do that to someone he hadn't spoken to. And he had finally tracked me down and he called my dorm phone. And he was like, I'm outside. Come outside. And I was like, okay. I guess so. Yeah. All right. I was with my partner, my boyfriend, And so I was like, yeah, I'll just take, him outside with me, see what the hell's going on. And there was this very naive part of me that was like, well, we're friends, right? I mean, I knew that he wanted to have sex with me, but we were also friends. We also talked, a lot. It was all 90% about sex, but we also talked. But it was very creepy that he was so insistent that I came outside. The whole thing gave me a really gross feeling in the pit of my stomach. But my boyfriend went with me, and we did go outside because you couldn't get in the building without a student pass unless someone opened the door for you, which I don't know who would have opened the door for him at 1 a.m. on a Sunday. But he was standing outside in the courtyard outside of my dorm, and his car was behind him and it was running, and he was gigantic. He was like 6'6". I had no idea he was that big, and he was built like a football player. He was huge. I am not a very big woman. I was pretty intimidated. My boyfriend was a little shorter than me even, and I was like, oh fuck, we might have brought ourselves into a situation here. And so I stayed close to my door and the door of the dorm, and Matt was very angry that I had brought someone with me, and he was like, you tell him to go inside, you get in my car, we're gonna talk. And he talked to me like that, very snappish, like ordering me around, as though he believed that he had groomed me to the point where I would do whatever he said. It was like he had trained a dog, and that's how he was talking to me. You get in my car right now. You go inside, and you get in my car. And I was like, he's not leaving. And, my boyfriend was like, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. What do you want, you weirdo? And he was like, I'm not going to tell you what I want until you get in my car. And I was like, I'm not getting in your car until you tell me how you found me. And he was like, get in the car and I'll explain it. And I was like, I'm not getting in your car until you explain it. And he was like, no, that's not how this is working. I will come over there and I will pick you up and I will throw you in this car. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing this. And I went back inside, and he couldn't get in. Obviously, he didn't have a student ID, and he didn't run after us. He was a good distance away. He wouldn't get too far away from his car for some reason. But we went back inside, and he called and called and called and called the dorm phone. I turned the ringer off, and it took him about an hour and a half of trying to get me to calm down. And finally, I did answer the phone one last time, and I said, I will call the police if you don't leave, because my boyfriend urged me to do that. Because we didn't want to call the police. We were kids, we were 18, and he had a little bit of weed on him, that kind of thing. We don't trust the police. We'll probably get in trouble, for fuck's sake. Back then, probably would have gotten in trouble just for being awake at a certain time. I don't know, it was crazy shit, but I was like, I'll call the police if you don't leave. And he was like, you have to understand that if I leave, I'm not coming back. And I was like, that's literally what I want. I don't know why you're acting like that's not the best thing I've ever heard. Fuck off. And he drove away, and I never heard from him again. He was just gone. I mean, I had some random calls to my dorm phone that I didn't answer. I didn't answer it after that unless I knew the number. But I got some random calls, which, could have been him. It could have just happened, but I never answered them, so I don't really know. But I never heard from him again. He just left. But the fact that he found me after 2 years of silence and tracked me down and tried to get me into his running car in the middle of the night. If my boyfriend hadn't been there, I genuinely don't know what would have happened to me, but I don't think it would have been good. And you guys can draw your own conclusions to that. That's Matt. And this is the third story I will tell. There were many more, but I'm just going to keep it to 3, and then we're going to have a little chat about the lasting effects of grooming after, and then, it'll be done. But this is the last and final story, and it's a pretty quick one. I remember I was 15, and I met a dude in a chat room on Yahoo, as all of these stories start. And I still, to this day, remember his screen name. But just like with John, I'm not going to say it. I don't want that to count as doxing, even though it's a old Yahoo screen name from 20 years ago. But I don't know, man. I don't want to get in trouble. But DM me for the screen name if you want to sleuth him out, because he does seem pretty fucking dangerous. Most of the people I met in chat rooms, because on Perverted Justice, they do regional chat rooms, and I always went into romance and roleplay chat rooms. I was a horny teenager. I had been groomed into this hypersexuality, and that was just how I had been trained to get attention. So that's what I did. I mean, I was, And so we met in one of those kinds of chat rooms, and by a very strange stroke of luck, he lived about 5 blocks from me. Very, very close. He lived on the street that my bus stop was on. He just lived a little, a block up from it. And I was like, that's crazy. And of course, another thing you're probably hearing here is the stupidity of me giving someone my address. Because we didn't talk very long. Like, this was a very quick situation. We talked for about 2 days before I did meet him in person. So, I am telling these stories because they are miraculous saves. Please know that there are stories where there are no miraculous saves that I am not going to tell you. But they did happen. These ones are just easier to hear, and I think still are frightening enough to drive the point home, but they still give you that big sigh of relief when nothing happens to me at the end. So I'm not going to tell you the ones with the bad endings. We're just going to do the good endings, and that's only 3 of them. Anyways, we agreed to meet after talking for a few days because we lived so close, and he had told me that he saw me at the bus stop that morning. He had sat on his porch and looked, and I had seen him, but it was pretty far away, so I didn't get a good look at him, but he, made sure that I was a real person. And if you read chat logs or listen to them, you will often see the groomers wanting to know what school they go to and what time they go to school and what bus they take, and they want to drive by and make sure that that is the child they're talking to. And lucky for him, he got lucky and he found him. He found one. So it was near the end of the school year, and it was nice out. It was, June, and the next day was a Saturday, so we decided to meet up. And he wanted to just hang out at his house, but my favorite activity to do back then was me and my girlfriend. We would just, if we weren't online, we were just wandering around town. We would go for walks, long walks, and we would just talk about stuff. And I loved going for long walks, and I wanted to go for a walk with him. I thought that would be easier for me and would calm me down a little bit because I had a lot of social anxiety. At this point, I was a virgin, and no one had ever even kissed me or held my hand. Sorry, I forgot my first boyfriend did hold my hand. Anyways, no one had ever kissed me or touched me in any way, really, other than hand holding. So I was a little nervous about the really aggressive sexual things he wanted to do to me. And so I asked him if we could just do a quick walk around the block to talk, and then we would go into his house. It would make me more comfortable. And he was very against that, but I wouldn't meet him if he didn't do it. And I said it was kind of weird that he was so nervous about it. And I was like, what could possibly be the problem? Because you guys, I didn't know it was illegal. I did not know what he was doing was illegal. I thought it was normal. I thought 18 was when you could vote, sign up for the army, buy cigarettes, and buy lottery tickets. I thought that's what being 18 meant. I didn't realize. Because who tells you that? Who tells you about statutory rape laws? They're pretty well known now, but back then, nobody really talked about it, and it wasn't seen as a bad thing, really. For the people that were in my social circle, at least. But I had an auxiliary friend, an acquaintance in my school whose boyfriend was 32, and everybody knew she was dating him. And they ended up getting married after high school and having a bunch of kids, and then they got divorced much later. But that was not uncommon. I know at least 2 girls who married 30-year-old men straight out of high school. Everybody just kind of accepted it. I don't know why, but these days it's very much. This was before To Catch a Predator, because that was about end of 2005, 2006, and that's about when I graduated high school. So at the time, it was not, no one knew this was a national crisis. It was before, Megan's Law and the registries and stuff like that. It was just not well known. I did not know he was doing anything illegal. He did. He very much did. I didn't. And so he didn't want to get caught with me. And I was like, who would possibly be upset about this? And he was like, he was being cagey about it. He didn't say, oh, it's illegal or anything. He would say I just don't feel comfortable with that. And I'd be like, literally, why? And so finally he agreed that we could do one walk around the block and then go straight into his house. And I was like, okay, I'll walk over right now because, I was going to meet him at his house. And I got over to his house and I knocked on his door and he opened it a little bit and looked at me and looked around the street, and he was like, okay, come in. And I was like, no, we're gonna walk. And he was like, I really changed my mind about that, and I think you should just come in, it's hot out there, I don't want to walk in the heat, and giving all these excuses. And I was very nervous, and I got this really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, that gut reaction. And I had not been taught to trust my gut. I did not know the gift of fear at this point. And I swallowed it. I thought it was nerves because, he was a grown man. He was 35. 5. He was a grown man. He was, kind of cute, I guess, but my standards were pretty low at the time. And I thought it was just nerves because this was my first big real adult date where I was going to have to do the things that I typed. And looking back, that was absolutely, I knew that if I went into that house, something bad would happen to me. All the lights were off inside. All the curtains were closed. And I remember thinking, it's a beautiful sunny day and it's mid-afternoon. Why are all of the curtains closed? That's so strange. And he was like, just come in, just come in, just come in. At one point, he put his hand out and he was like, well, at least shake my hand. And I was like, this is so strange, but I did it. And he tried to yank me inside. And I pulled back and I was like, what are you doing? You're being very strange. And I was like, if you're not going to go for the walk, I'm going to go home because this is very odd and I don't know if I like it. And so the thought of me leaving and him not getting to molest me was enough that he was like, fine. I'll go for a walk with you, but we better be quick. And I was like, honestly, at this point, like I did not really want to go for the walk, but I, told myself to man up and, put up or shut up, as they always kept telling me. And I was like, okay, we'll go for a walk. Thank you for, doing that for me. Thanking your groomer. Insane. But anyway, so we started going for this walk and a miracle happened. As we were coming down the main street ahead of me, about a block and a half, I saw my older sibling walking down the street towards us on their way to their friend's house. And I was like, oh shit, because I thought I was going to get caught like meeting dudes off the internet, which I was not supposed to be doing, and I was going to get in trouble. I did not realize the absolute pants-shitting terror that this man was about to go through, and I did not understand it until I was much older and reflecting on it, because I was like, oh shit. And Travis, his name was Travis, was like, what? And I was like, that's my sibling. And he was like, oh fuck, and he went ghost white, and I was like, okay, just start walking faster and I will start walking slower and we'll make it look like you were just passing me on the street, okay? And just loop around the block, I'll follow you, I'll talk to him, I'll ditch him, and I'll tell him like, no, I don't know that guy, and that kind of thing. He was like, okay. And so we did that, and he walked ahead, and I slowed down like as though he was passing me, and I caught up, he turned the corner, and I caught up my sibling, and my sibling knew immediately that that's not what was going on. And they were like, what are you doing? And I got like yelled at, and they were like, you're coming home with me right now. And I was like, no, I wasn't doing anything. I'm just going for a walk. And they were like, I don't believe you. You're going home right now. You're not acting like this. I cannot believe you. And they marched me home. And I apologized to Travis on Yahoo later. And he was like, I think that it's best that we don't meet again. That was too close of a call. And I was like, yeah, I would have been so grounded. And I did not realize why he was now terrified. Like, I really hope that terrified him into not meeting any other kids. But the way he tried to yank me into that house, that man was dangerous. I don't know. Hard to say. So that's how my older sibling saved me from yet another possible life-ruining experience. Not that I got out of it unscathed. Karma came for me in the end with all my BS. I'm victim blaming myself right now. But yes, I do have an unusual amount of tragedy behind me that I won't get into, but these are good examples of things that can happen when someone is sheltered and uneducated about the things that happen in the world and about adult relationships, when you don't teach them sex ed, when you don't have frank conversations with them about sexuality and about personal safety and about their own boundaries and respecting themselves, when you kind of just assume that they'll figure it out on their own and lead by example, but not actually with words. So have the uncomfortable conversations with your kids. And my parents went with the sort of very aggressive, you'll be grounded for the rest of your life if you do any of these things kind of thing. So I just hid it from them instead of telling them the frightening things that were happening to me, because I knew I would be grounded and I knew it would be my fault. And attitudes have now shifted where it's no longer as much the child's fault for these situations, but in my day, that's absolutely how it would have gone down. And I did not have a trusted adult to talk to. I didn't. I am a very proud aunt, and I have an indeterminate number of nibblings that I love very much, and some of them are teenagers. And I talk to them very seriously about the dangers of people trying to worm their way in. I make sure that I am a safe place for them to tell me if something feels wrong. I don't judge. I don't get them in trouble. We have agreement where if they say the secret code word, what they're about to tell me, like I promise on my life, I will not tell their parents unless they are in mortal danger. which isn't, I mean, if they told me something that I thought would hurt them, I would absolutely tell their parents. But they usually use that for, I tried vaping the other day, or I was texting, that person I wasn't supposed to be texting, or I stole my brother's AirPods. Like, they usually use it for that kind of stuff, but those are petty teenager secrets, and they come to me if they need to, because I am the person that won't freak out and ground them or anything like that. And I needed that person in my life so badly back then. And I want to be that person for them. I don't want this to happen to them. I don't want them to have to seek attention and validation in other places. So I am always available for them to talk to if they need. And the lasting effects of grooming are devastating. I still struggle with my self-esteem. All these years later, I see very little worth in myself if it isn't based on sexuality. I find that it's difficult to remember that I have any worth at all if someone isn't engaging with me sexually. And partners throughout my life have helped me through it. Gomez is the best person to have by my side to work through life with me. We're two disabled people who rely on each other, and we are best friends and confidants, and he's always there for me. And he's heard all of these stories, and he has helped me work through them over the last 13 years. These things have taken my life and altered it. I am a different person because of it. I would have had a much different life if grown men could have controlled themselves. And it has taken me 20 years now, and I'm not even fully there, but it's taken me 20 years to stop blaming myself for the things that adults did to me when I was a child. And reading these chat logs and seeing the ghosts of my groomers in them helps process it. To know that it wasn't just me. It wasn't because I was so broken that I didn't have some neon sign above my head that says easily manipulated. It was just the actions of bad people, and that there are good people who wouldn't do that. It's just that only the bad people ever stick around. And it warped my view of relationships to the point where they were all unstable. They were all messy for so long. And I didn't know why. And it was because I was completely unable to connect to anyone on an emotional level. I could only connect on a sexual level. It was because I had never been naturally taught that the emotional side of me, the mental side of me, the person I am, my love of cooking, my goofy songs that I sing to things, the way I like to dance just to any tune that's in my head, the way I am funny and smart and engaging and just a generally kind person. None of those things were ever worth anything. I could only offer up sexuality. And so relationships based on sexuality only don't last. They're unstable. I had to learn the parts of myself that were worth having. And I did not understand appropriate adult relationships. Not until therapy taught me that I am not sexuality. I am a person. I am Morticia, and I am worth being alive because I am worth the space that I take up. I am not a collection of sex organs. I am not a good body to be used. I am not the girl that will do anything. I am not the town bicycle. I am none of those things that people said about me, even though none of them were true at the time. I was called a whore so many times, and I hadn't even lost my virginity. And I internalized so much of it, and it wasn't until I found out that I was someone else, that I was a whole person worthy of love and respect without sexuality being a part of it, that I could even heal. And I became a really big fan of To Catch a Predator when it came on, and I still remember thinking that, wow, these guys are just terrible. I was, again, old enough at the point that it was no longer illegal to do these things to me, pretty much. I had found out 17, 18 that I had found out finally that it was illegal. And I remember thinking that the men on To Catch a Predator, like some of them seemed nice and it seemed like they were getting the raw end of the deal, and the girl was very, the decoy was probably really pushing for it, and like the things that happened to me were okay because I was in control of my sexuality, and like, yeah, it's really bad to do that to someone who isn't in control of their sexuality, but I definitely was. So the things that happened to me were fine, but I could tell that the stuff that happened on To Catch a Predator wasn't, and it created this weird like cognitive dissonance inside of me, and it became an obsession. I couldn't stop watching it, but I couldn't figure out why, and it was because I was watching the things that happened to me play out over and over and like finally getting justice, but I didn't even know I needed the justice, so I didn't know why it was pushing that dopamine button in my head to watch it. And I would watch it off and on, clips on YouTube, that sort of thing, over the next 20 years or so. And then a few years ago, I had an accident and I am now disabled, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and that's when I found out that perverted justice was a thing and you could just read the chat logs. And I read the very first one that I ever read on the site. I don't remember which one it was, but I went there and I started reading them, and I started learning about grooming, and I started really actually detangling the very base of the knots that were still inside of me. I had gotten the easy parts out, but there were still these little tangled up knots, and reading the chat logs helped me comb through the stuff that had happened to me and to realize that it was not okay. And seeing the decoys, especially in the early days, if you use the Wayback Machine, the decoys were a lot more sexually aggressive, just like I was. And the decoy comment saying it's still not okay, and that feels good. Each time that happens, each time the decoy is sexually aggressive and the person agrees and they're like, and the decoy note is like, doesn't make it okay, it heals another part of me. It gives me the freedom to say I was a victim of this, and these things should not have happened to me, and I am not responsible for these things happening to me because I was a child. And it heals me. Now I can laugh at it. And there's so much power in laughing at it, because you can't start laughing at something until it can't hurt you any longer. And those people cannot hurt me any longer. Those ghosts are finally laid to rest. And this channel is essentially my celebration of that, and I think I fucking deserve it. Fuck the YouTube censors. I fucking deserve it. That is my story. And I know that this Taco Tuesday has been difficult to listen to. I hope that some of you did. I understand that this will be my least popular video. That does not bother me. I don't think that hearing my story is anything interesting. It's happened to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people over the years. It's nothing new. It's nothing exciting. I don't care if you listen to it. But it did feel good to get it out there. And I hope you understand more of where I'm coming from, why I like these chat logs, and I hope you have a better appreciation for the amount of humor I'm able to put into them. The background, essentially, of where this whole thing comes from. This has been the story of Morticia. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will answer anything you ask, within reason, obviously. No, I'm not going to tell you my butthole size. It's 36 inches wide, obviously. But I will... If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am not particularly afraid of most questions, so. And if this helped you in any way, always let me know. But I love you all. Please take care of yourselves. And next Taco Tuesday will be funny. Maybe. I hope. I promise. This might be a two-parter. I don't know. We'll see. It is. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty long. I think I'm going to cut a lot of this out. So I'm going to say it right now. We are at an hour and a half. We'll see what makes the cut. Okay. I love you all, and I will see you in the next one.